We live in a society filled with morons who call themselves libertarians or socialists or Marxists or gender theorists. And all of these absolute fools believe that political disagreement can be understood fundamentally from an economic perspective or a power imbalance perspective or from the perspective of race privilege or gender privilege or whatever nonsense people talk about nowadays. But the truth of the matter is that political disagreement and people's political opinions in general are first and foremost and virtually without exception best understood from a psychological perspective. And as you will see by the end of this video, even the most stereotypical caricature of a political actor in a tribe that we would disagree with, like the following individual whom we will psychoanalyze in this video.
They were ready to let me go at the police station. I said the M word in the back of the police car, so they wouldn't let me go. A man in a dress? That says it all. You know what I mean? It's not my fault that you're a snowflake and you can't handle a joke. And I'm just supposed to sit there like a little soy boy? I don't think so.
Even someone like that still has enough humanity that warrants that we look at that person holistically, psychologically, and not as a one-dimensional model that can get plugged in to a sociological or economic theory. I've distilled this hour-and-a-half conversation down to about 15 to 20 minutes, in which a Trump supporter named Jimmy from Philly has a conversation with the online therapist Dr. K from HealthyGamerGG, who's one of my all-time favorites. As you saw already, you could not come up with a more caricatured, stereotypical guy who is easy to write off. I mean, he literally does whippets in the middle of this conversation.
When he was skipping along and being called gay, that makes a lot of sense to me.
But if by the end of this video you do not feel a strong sense of empathy and sympathy towards Jimmy from Philly, then I honestly believe you are probably a psychopath or a sociopath. So without further ado, let's jump into the interview. This interview occurs on David Pakman's show, and David Pakman starts off by introducing us to Jimmy from Philly, and everything he's about to say here is true.
Jimmy has talked to me about his problems with alcohol, and you guys can probably see he's got some bottles there over his right shoulder, and that's something I've talked to Jimmy about before. Jimmy has talked about how he has a daughter, but at least at one point wasn't allowed to see her because of some physical violence that Jimmy was at least I'll say he was accused of, and we'll maybe leave it to Jimmy to tell us more about the specifics of that. Jimmy was also arrested not long ago because of, as I understand it, chasing a car with 4 black teenagers down the street while intoxicated, and that led to a sort of legal situation as well for Jimmy, and that's kind of the Jimmy that I know big picture.
Here's Jimmy's response to that introduction.
I was arrested for public drunkenness, but I beat the case. They had a video of me going after a car. It doesn't prove that I was drunk. They had arrested me because I was off my the video showed them that I was off the property, and they said I was publicly drunk. The video showed that I was angry, not that I was drunk. I was drunk, but I was I wasn't that drunk. They were ready to let me go at the police station. I said the M word in the back of the police car, so they wouldn't let me go. Well, Doc, here's what happened. Okay, so I'm a Trump supporter. I have signs on my lawn. They continued to get stolen, right? So I sat out there and was guarding them. And I'm drinking a little bit while I'm out there. 4 black men bum rush the lawn. They take signs real quick, and they ride around the block, taunting me 3 times, fuck Whitey, fuck Trump. The second time they did it, I ran in the house, I got a knife. Third time, they got caught at the light. I ran after the car. I was a little tipsy. I stabbed the top of the tire. I should have stabbed the sidewall, but the knife disintegrated in my hand. And they got out of the car laughing and chased me back to the house. Then they have the temerity to drive around the neighborhood 3 times, yelling racial epithets at me, taunting me with the signs out the window, and I'm just supposed to sit there like a little soy boy? I don't think so. That's not going to happen. That's not the type of person I am. I am going to do something about it. Right or wrong, I'm going to jail. I don't give a fuck.
Do you find that oftentimes, people try to like paint you as crazy by sort of sharing stories like this or things like that?
Well, I am a little nuts, Doc. I have no problem with that.
What does that mean?
I do things that most people wouldn't do. I'm very aware of that. That is my personality. That's how I am.
Now, if I were a pretentious asshole, which I could be and probably am, I would just accept that explanation from Jimmy on face value and say, well, that's just the way he is. Now I can fit him in my economic or sociological theory about how if he only had more economic opportunity, he'd be happier. If he only didn't internalize his white privilege, he wouldn't have these backwards views. But that's not how human beings develop their personalities. And as you're about to witness, the psychological puzzle pieces are going to begin to fall into place.
Help me understand, like, who are you, bro?
Gee, I don't know. I like to have fun.
Okay.
I see everything as funny.
Okay.
I make fun of everybody and everyone, including myself.
Okay.
But see, David, if I make fun of like a homosexual or a transsexual, let's face it, the man in the dress is the funniest thing since the dawn of time. All right? I'm sorry. I make fun of these folks, but that doesn't mean that I hate them. If these people want to be accepted as normal, then they better be ready to take jokes. You understand?
Okay. Yeah.
Because if you're making them some sacred cow, which is what David does, and then that's just, they're not special people. Okay? I have nothing against them. But I think that when shit is funny, it's funny, and I'm going to point it out.
This may sound like a weird question, okay?
Go ahead.
But can you help me understand what you think is funny about it?
A man in a dress? That says it all.
Okay.
My name's Linda, and they got a deep voice. I mean, come on, man. This shit is funny.
Okay. I hear what you're saying.
Humor is an essential part of Jimmy's worldview, as is, to be honest, mine, and many people I know who may or may not be watching this video. And for Jimmy, he makes fun of gay people and transgender people, people that would be considered politically oppressed minorities by many. And one might assume, well, this is because Jimmy grew up in a culture in which that privileged his identity, and he learned to oppress them that way. But if we do what every person should do when analyzing who they are and why they come to believe the things they believe, we will see that it was a much more personal story that started in Jimmy's childhood.
What was growing up like for you?
What was what?
What was growing up like for you?
I was very happy. I used to be so happy. I used to skip down the streets. And of course, the kids in Philly broke my balls until I stopped doing it. You know, the kids on the corner, I would skip. I was literally that happy. And I have a lot of energy too. So kids would make fun of me, but I mean, that's Philly for you. You can't do a goddamn thing without getting your balls busted on the corner. It's like, that's what happens in Philly. I don't know.
So Jimmy, so it sounds like when you were growing up, you used to like skip, and you said people would bust your balls for that. What does that?
Yeah.
Can you help me understand what that means?
Well, I mean, I was so happy that I literally skipped down the street as a child, and the kids would make fun of me. It wasn't that big of a deal. I just stopped skipping down the street. I was still happier than a motherfucker, but I stopped skipping down the street. That's all.
Do you think as a kid you would have preferred it if they didn't make fun of you?
No, because it taught me how to come back with snappy, witty responses to insults and shit.
I see. So it's
you
just
got to be on your guard in Philly. You're hanging on the corner. You got to be able to hold your own.
Sure.
So Jimmy learned to develop a sense of humor as a defense mechanism to navigate the world and to be able to fit in. Not a particularly unique experience, and one that, once you understand, puts what he previously said in a much clearer light.
See, if I make fun of like a homosexual or a transsexual, let's face it, the man in the dress is the funniest thing since the dawn of time. All right? I'm sorry. I make fun of these folks, but that doesn't mean that I hate them. If these people want to be accepted as normal, then they better be ready to take jokes. You understand?
Okay. So while some might be quick to write off Jimmy as a homophobe or a transphobe, I don't see that. I see someone a lot more complex than that, and I see someone actually capable of a lot of emotional maturity. And obviously, that's not apparent when you first listen to him, and if you only judge someone by their political affiliations and their sort of weird personality. It's in this next part of Jimmy's story that I see the strength of character that he actually does have.
What does that mean? You were in a boys' home?
Yeah, my mom put me in it was called St. Francis Vocational School. And you didn't have to be adjudicated, but I was doing a lot of stupid shit. I had gotten into drugs. I'd committed some crimes. My mother didn't know what to do with me. She put me in this boys' home. She thought she was helping me. Believe me, I had a fucking ball there. I didn't want to leave.
Jimmy, so how old were you when you got put into the vocational school?
13.
And do you remember how you felt when your mom kind of put you in there?
Well, I felt abandoned, was very angry with my mother. I remember her crying, kissing me, and my dad going something like "fly right" or some shit, you know. But that wore off very quickly. But like the con artist I was at that age, I kept kind of letting my mother think, kind of letting her feel guilty. But within days, like I was having a very good time there.
And then how did it feel when the judge was ready to let you come home and your mom was like, we got to send you to St. Gabe's?
Well, when I was a child, that really pissed me the fuck off.
What pissed you off about that?
I'm watching because she wouldn't take me back. In other words, I got angry with her, and I would be in the cell with these kids from Kensington, where Kensington's like a real bad section of Philadelphia. It's where the men are men and so are the women. I mean, it's crazy. It's gotten even crazier. But these kids would do all kind of shit, like way worse shit than me, and their mothers and fathers would pick them up. Mine wouldn't, and I mean, as young as that was my thinking. I couldn't stand her. I fucking hated her. And my father behind her back would say, if it was up to me, this wouldn't happen, So he pissed me off too, because I thought he was a fucking snowflake. When I got older, I realized my mother was trying to help me. That's all. I was an asshole. I was a kid. I mean, I was immature.
Have you forgiven your mom?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Help me understand how you did that.
Well, I just grew up and realized that, look, my mother was manic depressive. She had her own issues. She was in psychiatric hospital twice for 6 months, right? The woman was a little fucked up, and she wanted to help me. There's no doubt about it. I remember my aunt from Scotland said, I said something derogatory about my mother. And she sat me down. She said, Jimmy, do you realize you're the golden boy? I said, what do you mean? She said, whenever there's a problem with your eyes, she whisked you right off to the doctor. Every time you were sick, she brought you to the hospital. She said, that woman wasn't trying to hurt you. She had her own problems, and she went with what she thought would help you, and apparently it didn't.
Yeah, so Jimmy, that's so interesting. So I'm kind of hearing, so what I'm hearing is that your mom really doesn't have anything to atone for.
No, she did her best. She told me, she said, Jimmy, there's no book on how to raise children. I make mistakes, So, my mother loved me. She was a little nuts. I mean, she was manic depressive. I mean, but the rest of my family don't forgive her. They're kind of surprised that I take the tack that I take. My sister said to me one time, she put you in a cage. Like, my sister was threatening to put her in a home, right? And my mother was definitely afraid of this. And I got real pissed off at my sister. I said, look, she calls me crying one more time, I'm going to fuck you up. You know what I mean? Like, I'm tired of this shit. She wanted to die in her own home. The woman had the right to do that. There was nothing wrong with her. She fell one time. Big fucking deal. And my sister was like literally terrifying her. And I stuck up for her. My sister was shocked. She said, well, she put you in a cage. I'm like, she put me in a cage for a fucking reason. She was trying to fucking help me. You ain't trying to help this woman. You know what I mean? I don't like that shit. And she stopped. Fuck that shit. You ain't gonna fuck with my mom.
My
mother wasn't perfect. She tried to do the best she could with me. Guess what? You know what she told me? Until you're 18, I'm going to keep your little ass alive. And you're going to go where the fuck I want you to go. And when you're 18, if you die, it's on you. Hey, it worked. I'm 58, right? Right? So, mom wasn't that crazy. You understand?
It's hard to listen to that story and not, in at least some way, empathize with Jimmy, regardless of how similar or dissimilar your experiences might be to his. This is what it means to take a psychological perspective on people and how they arrive at their beliefs and conclusions about the world, political or otherwise. You can hear the archetypal elements of his story, whether it's struggle, abandonment, isolation, but also of maturation, forgiveness, growth, loyalty. To view him as a one-dimensional person who is just a backwards Trump supporter is so beyond foolish. And what's most revealing, as you're about to see, is that Jimmy has every right to call himself a victim, and yet he does not. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing, and perhaps his inability to recognize how much of a victim he is to his detriment. But regardless, I think it is in this last part of Jimmy's story that explains, or at least shows, the fundamental motivations for why he is the way that he is.
The biggest thing that I felt like a victim was when my ex used the police and the courts to lie and say I threw the baby on the floor. They were all against me. The accusations was what mattered, not the fact whether or not it happened. They did no investigation. They didn't ask if the child was taken to the hospital. They just charged me, made me spend thousands of dollars for a lawyer. To this day, that pisses me off. If somebody accused me of anything, they do an investigation. But when a woman says a man did something to a kid, there's no fucking investigation. They just charge you. That's wrong. That shit's wrong. Cost me thousands of dollars to disprove a lie. Fuck yeah, that's wrong. Believe women. Fuck that. Not without evidence. Fuck that. Now the kid's in Harvard. So, and guess what? That kid read books because she saw me reading books. I always read. Her prior series in their entire fucking life. Okay? You know?
Are you
Kid calls me when she's 10. Listen to this. She calls me when she's 10 years old. She says, Daddy, Mommy told me to get in the tub, but I was already in the tub. I'm like, what? She said, Mommy told me to get in the tub, but she was already in the tub. I said, is Mommy drinking? She said, yeah. I said, put her on the phone. I said, she's at the age of reason now. If you want her to hate you like I fucking hate you, keep fucking drinking. And to her credit, 3 weeks later, she went into rehab. I believe she's still sober. I'm not sure, but she's been sober a number of years. So,
are you
mission accomplished. The kid won't talk to me. The mother poisoned her.
Doesn't sound like you got a whole lot of credit for it.
Well, I shouldn't get credit. Look, the kid was smart. Kid liked to read. You know what I mean? And my whole family's like thinking Carol did something. That kid went to Harvard despite that dumb bitch. He drank a fifth of JD a day for 10 years. That kid was born smart, and she liked to read. And she would ask me, Daddy, what's your book? He said. And I would stop because my father read all the time, but he would get pissed off if you stopped him. So I would stop, put the book down. Well, Julia, here's what happened so far. I'll let you know when it ends.
Jimmy,
yeah,
I'm gonna kind of interrupt you for a second. Is that okay? How does it feel to share this?
Good.
What feels good about it?
I don't know. I like talking about, how would I put it, about my daughter.
But I sort of also understand that, playing a victim is not something that you're going to do. When I think a little bit about your daughter and her being at Harvard, and I hear you kind of speak with pride, and also that she's been poisoned against you, like, I think it'd be okay to shed a tear on that if you felt like it.
Nah, sometimes I get a little sad about it, but I basically convinced myself that, look, the kid has reached the pinnacle of schools. She's not going to want for anything if she plays her cards right. And up to now, she's played her cards right. So she's not going to need her father that much. And if she doesn't want me in her life, then that's her choice. There's nothing I can do about it. Because, look, let's face it, that's a sad situation. The kid ain't talking to me.
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can do about it.
Now, I wish Jimmy's story ended on a more positive note, but that's not how it is, and that's where Jimmy is at this point in life. And it's certainly a sad and distressing story, but what is most distressing, what is most sad, is that there are millions of people who would look at Jimmy and see the F. Biden flag in his background and write him off as a white supremacist insurrectionist. People will say, well, if only manufacturing was not outsourced to China, or if only Jimmy did not grow up inheriting the transphobic social norms of his society, he wouldn't be the way that he is. There is no point in developing and having these sophisticated political and economic and cultural theories about how to solve society's ills unless you are willing to understand the psychological nature and psychological motivations of the individuals on which those political, economic, and cultural theories are predicated on. The reason that we need to understand the people whom we disagree with is so that, well, there's a variety of reasons, so that society doesn't fall apart, which it increasingly looks like it's going to. But more importantly, by beginning to understand others whom we disagree with, we can actually begin to turn that lens inside and understand, well, why am I the way that I am? And why have I come to the beliefs that I've come to? Because if society falls apart, it will be the consequence of the moral failings of each of us who didn't step up, who sat back, who just thought, well, my worldview is correct. It doesn't need to be changed in any significant way. It's the other people with the problem, when nothing could be further from the truth. And so with that, good luck and Godspeed.